In this video, we're going to look at how we can opt out of Apple's marketing emails. This includes opting out of Apple announcements, any release information from apps or TV shows or music, as well as the Apple News newsletter. We're going to look at this on the Mac, the iPad, and the iPhone. Let's first look at it on the Mac. Let's go to my Mac. Now, when you're on the Mac and you want to opt out of these emails, what you need to do is go over to your system preferences. So I go up to my Apple menu here, and then what we do is we go over to our system preferences. Under system preferences, we go over to our Apple ID. This is what these marketing emails are tied to, your Apple ID. This is where we opted in to receive them. So now I select this, and then we go over to name, phone, and email. Now, when I select this, it may take a few seconds, but when I select this, we're going to be able to select which emails we want to receive. I can select if I want to receive announcements or any information, release information on apps, music, TV, and more, as well as the Apple News newsletter. So let's say I no longer wanted to receive any new release information about apps, music, TV, and more. I just deselect this, and now I will no longer receive any emails about those items, about apps, music, TV, and more. I will still receive emails about any Apple announcements, and I will still receive the Apple News newsletter. So that's how we do this on the Mac. Let's take a look at how we can do this on the iPad and the iPhone. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my iPad and my iPhone. On the iPad, let's first look at the iPad. What I do is I go over to my Settings app. When I open this, what we need to do is we need to go to our account information. So I tap on my name here, and then you're going to see name, phone numbers, and email, just like we did on the Mac. And when I select this, which may take a few seconds, you're going to see where I can opt out of announcements, as well as apps, music, TV, and more, and the Apple News newsletter. Now, being that I am signed in to the same Apple ID, any change that I make on any one device is going to be reflected on all the devices. So on my Mac, if you remember, I opted out of receiving any emails about apps, music, TV, and more. And if we go over to the right, you're going to see it is turned off. Let's say I no longer wanted to receive the Apple News newsletter. All I do is go over to the right, I tap on this to turn it off. Now let's take a look at this on the iPhone. You're going to see that it reflected that change. So I go over to my iPhone here, and again we go over to our Settings app, and then we tap on our name, and then we go over to name, phone numbers, and email. It takes a few seconds, and again we have our various subscriptions, which includes announcements, apps, music, TV, and more, and the Apple News newsletter. And if we look, you're going to see that I'm no longer receiving any emails about apps, music, TV, and more. That's because I opted out of it on my Mac. And then when I was on my iPad, I also opted out of receiving the Apple News newsletter. And you're going to see that it reflects it here on my iPhone. So any change that I make across my different devices are going to be reflected across all of my devices. That is because it is tied to your Apple ID. So you have to be logged in using the same Apple ID on all your devices. And then once you do that, any changes you make with these opt-in emails, these subscriptions, it will be reflected across all the different devices. Now, if you do make a change, let's go ahead and say I did want to receive the Apple News newsletter. I'm going to turn this on. If we go back over to the iPad, you're going to see it does not turn on right away. What we need to do is we need to refresh this. So now I go back up under Apple ID, and then when I go back over to name, phone numbers, and email, watch what happens. You're going to see I'm now receiving the Apple News newsletter. So we have to refresh it. But I did make that change on my iPhone. And when I go back over to my Mac, you're going to see, if I were to refresh this, I go to Apple ID, I go to my name, phone, and email, I'm receiving the Apple News newsletter. So that's how we can opt out of Apple's marketing emails on the Mac, the iPad, and the iPhone.